Sound is here. Now that's the best thing, when you forget to put your microphone on. Man. Here we go. Finally, everything's gonna be there. Sorry guys. I don't know why I forgot. I was thinking about so many things. Forgot to put the wireless microphone. So here we are, and the chat room's working. So hey, that's cool. So hey, Tim Robinson, I am now giving you moderator status in the chat, and if you want to block somebody that's not right, simply put your mouse pointer over the comment of people that would not be nice. You'll see 3 dots on the right side. You can click on that and you can block the user if for some reason it would get out of control. So that's how it works. So Tim, you've got moderator status now, and it's fun to see a chat room. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. On the right side, you only have a flag. That's weird. And if you click the flag, do you have any options? I get 3 dots, so I don't know. Maybe you've got options with the flag or something. I don't know. That's weird. I'm just gonna test a little something here. Okay, sorry guys. Yeah. That's interesting. I got 3 dots. That's weird. So I guess, I don't know. Check it out. Okay. So check it out. Anyways, at least you can remove. But maybe because I'm the host, I have more options than you. Maybe that's the thing. So at least you can remove the comments from people that are not desired. So hey everyone, welcome to Learn the Tech show number 26. We are October 25th, 2016. This is a show about technology. We talk about different things. Today is going to be really kind of very relaxed. It comes from Francis that said, you know what about talking about technologies that change the world? And also something that is similar. I think it's you, Tim, that gave me an idea of failed technology, and I thought, well, technology to change the world is also nice. And I think failed technology will be really, really nice. He's got it. Pop up the chat. So nice to have everybody here. It's pretty cool, and there's a chat room now. And this will be standard from now on, so starting from next week, all shows will have a chat open. So I think it's going to be cool, and it's fun because it gives more interaction, and I think this is something that also people like, having more interaction, and it is fun to have more interaction. So I'm gonna, talk about stuff, and if you guys have any comments or anything, of course, the chat is open, and I'm actually watching the chat room. And sorry there for that microphone that I forgot to actually put the wireless microphone for some reason. It's always something that I go crazy about because I was like, oh my God, everything needs to be right. And it's always the first thing that I always think about is the microphone. For some reason, today is not the microphone. So welcome everyone. This is Learn the Tech show number 26. We're going to talk today about technologies that change the world in no particular order at all. And these are things that I've chosen, but you know what? I know there's like a million other things that will not be in that list. And you're going to say, well, I think this is, and that is, and so on. So hope you enjoyed today's show. Okay. First in our list, and I thought that one was a good one, electricity. I mean, electricity changed everything. Yeah, Stephen Mail is not there yet. So maybe he's going to pop up at some point. Should be here. So electricity. I mean, without electricity, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing today. I mean, this and understanding how to use the power of electricity, how to create electricity in different ways. I mean, this is one of the basics of our modern world today. If the power grid would go down, I think we can understand that pretty much hell would break loose. I was looking at an article on super flares from the sun. The last example of a really big flare that we had here is something. If you guys want to do some research and read a little bit about it later on, the Carrington event. The Carrington event is a major solar flare that happened in 1850, and it actually created so much currents induced in the ground that telegraphic stations were catching fire from the intense electricity in the telegraph system. And I was reading on how that type of event would create really major power outages around the world. So it's pretty amazing when you think about it. Electricity is guiding and controlling everything. We need electricity for everything, from starting your car to using a computer, lighting yourself at home, everything, eating, cooking. Electricity has become a major source of power today. And I think if we have to think about one of the technologies, electricity is probably one of the fundamental basics of pretty much everything in our modern life. It is pretty amazing. And I can tell you one thing: if the power grid would go down around the world, and you know what, in one of the articles that I read, they were saying that in our power stations we have these massive transformers, and that there's only one company in the world that actually produces right now these massive transformers, and that if the power would go out because of a massive solar storm, these power transformers would be a big problem because of one company making them, and they will all blow up, and it would take several months to years before the power would get back. So that's pretty amazing when you think about it. And so, let's not take for granted electricity. I think it's something that we use every day that we just forget about. And I gotta say that electricity, come on, I wouldn't be doing this, you wouldn't be watching, and we would be really in trouble, I think, without it. So one of the technologies, and by the way, I want to have interaction. If you guys think about something that I will not talk about today, why not, talk about it? It's just incredible. Okay, what else do we have? The automobile. Can any of you guys that drive cars imagine a world without cars? That transformed everything. People would go from point A to point B, but, with horses and stuff like that, and it was kind of complicated, and not everybody had a horse, and, you had to master the beast. And then the automobile, and the fact that the automobile at some point became priced at a point that pretty much everybody can buy a car today. It doesn't have to be a new car, but pretty much everybody would buy a car. And it helped basically make the world smaller. Now we can go from point A to point B in a much faster pace than a horse, of course. And I mean, people now own their own little mode of transportation. They can go hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. And I mean, that is another technology that changed the world. And it all started, of course, with the famous Ford T model that is the first ever, not only in cars, but also in assembly lines. I mean, it's the first time that an assembly line was done. So, it introduced all sorts of interesting things in our modern world, basically. Like Ricardo Mota says, without energy, it will be like the Stone Age, basically. Of course. Carol T says, everyone would buy a car unless you live in Portlandia, where they buy bicycles. Yeah, Tim Robinson says, would we find a replacement, other technology to do what we need? It is interesting, of course, cars changed our lives. A lot of people want one today. What else do we have? What else do we have in technologies? The airplane. That's something that also changed, from the Wright brothers. Now we have airplanes that let us go from continent to continent. Airplanes now let us go wherever we want in the world really easily. So Carol T says, waiting for Gilles to invent the transporter. Yeah, you know what? That would be good. One thing for sure, if I invent some kind of, teleportation machine, well, I'm inviting you all for a big party at my home, okay? So the airplane. The airplane now lets everybody go wherever they want. People don't even just stay in one place. Now, when they take a vacation, they want to go, here in Canada, the big craze is in winter. We want to go down south in Cuba or in Mexico or places where it's warm because we're going crazy with the weather. Airplanes have one of the most, it's incredible because airplanes is the most secure transportation. And it is scary because a lot of people are scared of taking the airplane. And one of the things about the airplane is that the problem with an airplane is that, when something goes wrong, it's just because it kills hundreds of people at one time. That's the biggest problem. But I think what's the most scary about airplanes is the fact that you're enclosed in this big device, this big, transportation device. And you know that once you're in the air, there's not a lot that you can actually do to get out. You just have to wait. It's a little bit like a boat, in a boat. I don't think you'll jump into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean to try to save you for sure. So it's in Gilles' garage under wraps. My transporter machine. Aha, who knows? So, but of course, it's one of the most secure transportation methods. And I think we have to give it credit for the first time, people can travel from country to country, continent to continent. It did change a lot, not just, for everybody, because now you can easily go to another country thanks to the airplane. And, a pretty fast amount of time. Of course, it's all relative. If you go to, Malaysia from Canada, of course, it's like 16 hours, but still, makes the world smaller, makes you see other people from other countries, and, it also helps business. A lot of businesses now use air transportation to change everything. So the airplane, I think, is something that is worth mentioning about, what changed our modern world. I do think we have to talk about that. And Patrick Manny says, bring back the Concorde. It was a nice plane. I remember the Concorde came in. The Concorde could not come in Montreal much because of the noise that it created, and also the fact that it needed a longer than usual runway, I believe. But it did come to the airport once, and I remember seeing the Concorde in the air. That was an amazing plane. I got to say that. Carol T says, transportation technology sure has changed the world, like you say. It made the world smaller. Yep, totally. Totally. It's now easy to have people going from one point to the other. So, and Tim was going to mention the Concorde also. Radio. That's one subject that me and Carol T in the chat room really know well. Radio. Radio has changed the world tremendously. I mean, radio has helped people learn a lot more about the world around, what's happening everywhere. I think one of the best examples that I've actually that always comes to mind for me. I was watching a documentary about World War II, and they were showing families gathering around the radio to have the latest news on what's happening in Europe in the World War. I think that is one of the best images I've ever seen to represent how radio really changed the way we get our information. It's still with us today, even though it has changed. You know, there's internet radio, there's all sorts of things that changed it. But it's still with us today. And I mean, one of the things that I always think about in radio is how everybody, even in urban areas, big cities, we should all have battery-powered radios. Because I gotta say that, when the power, we're talking about electricity at the beginning, when the power grid goes out, battery-operated radio is a great way to have information. Radio, once again, it's also something that makes, the world smaller, because like me, one of the things that I do like a lot is shortwave radio. It lets me learn about other nations, other countries. It makes the world smaller also. It's amazing, an invisible electromagnetic wave, something you can't even see, traveling, thousands of miles or, 100 kilometers or so, and giving you information into a little box that is almost magical, basically. So I think radio is one of the major technologies that transforms our society. If you'd ask young people today if radio did change or does change, I don't know. Young people today, I'm not really sure they listen to the radio that much. But it's still, I think, something important. And I do think radio still has its place and will still have its place in the future in the modern technologies. It might change, it might change from the type of radio we had from from the beginning to something different, but still, I think, Ricardo Mota says, I defiantly was addicted to radio back in the 90s. Carol T says, I think radio is one of the best forms of sharing information, not just in voice either. There are lots of digital modes that give us information almost as fast as we want it. Yes, that's true, and it's instantaneous. I mean, a signal transmitted from the other side of the world, takes milliseconds to reach its destination. So it's really instantaneous also. So that's pretty cool also. Tim Robinson in the 80s, 90s, CB radio. Ricardo says, to be honest, I don't listen not a lot today. I go to my clients and I look around my clients, the teenagers and all of that. I do not have the impression that teenagers today really listen much to radio. Like Carol T says, young people today don't see the radio that they use every day. Every cell phone has a radio in it, so it does every laptop, tablet. Yeah, that is true. It is a radio. And when your cell phone is receiving data, it's a form of, yes, there's a radio in there that receives all this data to have it displayed. So it's radio in another type of way. That is true. I haven't thought of that, but radios and our devices are bringing all sorts of information that is not only audio now, but visual also, because that radio gives us pictures also that we see on the screen. And that's kind of interesting. That is true. You know what? I like the chats for that. People bringing up points where, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. So that's pretty cool. Still, I do believe that everybody should have a battery-powered radio in their homes, because you never know what can happen. Here in 1998, we had one of the biggest ice storms ever. And I mean, there were parts of southern Quebec, the province of Quebec, that didn't have power for more than a month. And I mean, radio was essential, and amateur radio also. Yes, that cat loves me. I can tell you, Patrick. He's in love with me totally. It sounds a little weird and crooked when I say it like that, but that cat really loves me. Hey, TV, of course. I have my big screen TV. This one is still modern. This is still very modern. Like Bobby says, I agree, even during a major storm. Even a snowstorm, or even just a thunderstorm that hits in the summer. Radio is something interesting, important to have at home. DX, yep. DX, the cat for some, or Paul the cat for others. Choose the name that you want. He's a nice cat. So TV, wow, the first times that people gathered around to watch images on a screen in their homes. That's something that changed the world. It changed also society and how we interacted with each other. From not having much to do, we went to, and probably playing games and cards and stuff like that. We went to the radio, and then the family was in front of the radio listening to a broadcast and making images in their head. But then suddenly comes the TV, where not only now you have sound, but you have images coming from everywhere. The TV transformed totally modern society. Suddenly families would watch TV shows, would, really have the visuals of what's happening in the world. TV is something that is major in our modern society, I can tell you that. Carol T says, "Lol, I just shut off my dish network. I just hook up my TV to my laptop now." Yeah, it's a form of TV, TV, we get TV in different ways. For a long time, rabbit ears. Then came cable in the 70s, 80s. I remember it was when my mom told me to I remember how excited it was when my mom said, "And we have cable TV." I mean, that was one of the major moments. That was my thing. Check 1, 2. I don't know, I'm checking it out here. 1, 2. These problems. Here we go. It's okay. I think it's okay now. Sorry. Okay, if it ever cuts out, let me know. I believe it seems to be some kind of pairing problem between the two, because it can be the batteries. Batteries are new. So hopefully it's okay. So too much catnip. So basically, yeah, well, the batteries are new, so it's not a battery issue. I think it's some kind of pairing that's not working right, or these are digital, so I think now it's okay. Yep. So if something happens, anyways, I'm watching the chat. Hello, Albert Zappa says it's fine, so it's okay now. So hello everyone in the chat, by the way. Nice to have everybody on board. So, TV changed from the original rabbit ears to, what became cable TV. I was so excited when cable TV arrived. Wow. My mom was going crazy when I was young because I would play with the rabbit ears, because on Saturday mornings, I wanted to watch the cartoons that came from stations from northern New York State in Vermont, which is about 100 or so, a little more than 100 kilometers away from Montreal. And by playing with the rabbit ears, I could get my Saturday morning cartoons on these channels. And basically, then came cable TV, and then came, TV are now used for all sorts of things. You know what? This TV, I got, expensive, like, I don't know, at least 70 different stations from cable on this TV right now. And I gotta say that I use or listen to cable TV less than 10% of the time on this TV. What do I watch on this TV now today? And that's pretty much the modern way of watching TV. I watch Netflix or YouTube videos or tech shows that are online that I watch videos on this TV. And when I look at what I do with this TV, anyways, suddenly the TV's transformed into more of a computer screen today. But it's still there. And you know what? I think the TV, even today, is still a big part of pretty much everybody's life. Because whatever and however you use it, because the usage has changed, the TV is still the center point of our living room. And I think that hasn't changed for a long time. So that's pretty cool for that. Bobby says, I remember cable in the 90s and we had 40 stations. Today we had about 400. The worst thing about cable today is you got 400 channels, but if you start going around the channels, there is absolutely nothing interesting most of the time. And the more channels you have, the more you just go around and who cares? There's nothing good. So, yeah, you know what? I don't understand, by the way, people are saying how they enjoy the chat, and I don't understand why the chat didn't work earlier. It's working now, and I've done absolutely nothing different, and it's working now. So I guess there was probably some kind of bug. One thing that I was thinking about the chat earlier, I enabled the chat as the stream already was started, and I'm wondering if it didn't create some kind of bug where now the chat was already enabled before I started it. So maybe it made a difference. Yeah, it's true. There's so many commercials today. Incredible. And that's true. You don't have to have cable today. Bobby says, I have a Chromecast and watching your show now. There's a lot of things that TV has changed for that also. I mean, look at all the content online. You guys are watching me instead of watching cable TV. You know, there's a difference. It changed a lot the way that we consume our visual, basically. So, pretty cool. So, well, it's pretty much like that. Like Carol T says, Dish Network had hundreds of channels, but I only watched 5. Yeah, that's often what's happened. I can tell you that. Tim says I can ban anyone. Haha, the power. Just kidding. You better behave, guys. I think Tim has a power trip now. Okay, what's next in our technologies? That would be nice. A TV pirate broadcasting my show. That would be nice. I wouldn't say none of that. I've never seen a TV pirate. Anybody heard of a TV pirate? I've heard of radio pirates, and we still hear a lot of them. But TV pirates. Well, another thing that changed our world, and we have different versions of it, but the telephone. And this picture, by the way, reminds me so much when we had exactly that telephone at home when I was about 10 years old. And I remember that phone. It was like the popular model in the 80s. The telephone, how we communicate with each other. That's also something that changed our modern world. I can tell you that. And basically, we can now talk to anybody easily, contact somebody, you know, from home to home. That's something that changed the way we communicate with each other. We didn't have to, you know, have our friends over anymore. We just talked on the phone for hours. I remember talking on the phone for hours at a time at home. I remember even listening to shortwave radio with a friend that had a shortwave radio, and we would actually do reception reports through the phone. Funny, but you know, party line. Yeah, party line. So yours was beige, ours was black. I remember mine at home was black. And that, man, telephone. Of course, a more modern version of the telephone. Our smartphones and cell phones of all sorts. This changes the way we speak once again, the way we communicate. This is also a game changer. It's a modern technology that is a major technology today. One of the things that, you know, we do today is that less and less we speak on the phone. More and more we text. You know, even I was surprised about that because I used to talk on the phone a lot. And suddenly, when the cell phone, and I got my first cell phone because of business. Okay, the first time I had a cell phone was because I was starting my tech job, and I needed a phone, and I thought, well, a mobile phone is the best way to have it because people call you wherever you are. But as time goes by, you notice that you have less and less conversations, and today this has transformed the way that we actually communicate because now we're texting. We're sending out text, and I'm surprised even in myself of how many texts I receive and send instead of calling someone. It seems that instead of listening to the voice of somebody, now today we just want to text each other, short messages. And, you know, it's transforming the way we're talking to each other. It's also becoming something even more powerful. This little device, you know, I got a great example here, the S8. This little device is becoming our portable computer we have with ourselves all the time. And I mean, we go on the internet, we do everything with these today. And I got to say that it's just amazing what these devices are doing to us. We even have a lot of, Tumbits. Tumbits, you're texting, Tumbits. Well, that's what I'm guessing. Basically, this is even so important that it's now even creating an impact on the computers, because even people that, the young generation especially, doesn't even see why they should have a computer anymore, because basically these things do everything, and they're small and they're always with us. They have replaced digital cameras. Why have a digital camera today? And basically, we have our own cameras in our phones, and these are useful because the phone, we have it always with us. So when we need to take a picture, we always have a camera with us. It's really transforming everything, because now more than ever, we're taking pictures like, never in our lifetimes we ever did. We're communicating in so many different ways suddenly also. And it's creating also another ecosystem where, these things follow us, and companies follow us, and everything is following us everywhere. There's a major impact with these devices today. It's pretty amazing. So that's another technology that is totally changing the world. The computer changed the world, of course. From the first computers in the 70s, I remember my first Commodore VIC-20. I had a Commodore VIC-20 in 1981. Then I had a Commodore 64, Commodore 128. Moved on to an Amiga 500. Then I had my first PC, which was a 286. I still have my Amiga 500, my Atari 1040 ST, my Commodore 128. I still have those. They still work. I often plug them here and play with games. And basically, computers have transformed the way we do things. I remember the computer from the 80s, when a lot of people were saying, why the hell do I need a computer at home? And yeah, we were a small portion of people that had computers. But computers in the 80s weren't very, they weren't that great. They weren't connected to anything. Basically, we had programs in the computer. We weren't communicating. But slowly, the computer became that box that does things to the box that communicates. Because I remember when my first modem, and then connected to the BBS in the 80s, the bulletin board systems. That's the first thing that started to change how computers are used. Finally, computers are not just what I have at home in that box that, we have programs that do things. It now communicates with other computers, so other users. It's kind of interesting. And of course, as time progressed, the computer changed everything around us, especially with the internet today. There are more people with computers today than people that don't have computers now. Everything has changed. The computer is one of the technologies that also changed the world. And I'm looking at the cat that's looking at me with eyes that I can see really means I'd like to go outside. Be patient, 20 minutes left. So basically, the computer, this was something. This was something that changed the way that we consume technology, the way to consume news and everything. Carol T says, Kodak is coming out with an Android-powered camera in a smartphone form factor. Oh, that's interesting. Kodak was, unfortunately, so far behind in all of that. Bobby says, I remember my school had an Apple, they had Apple 2G, 2GS, Apple 2Gs. Yeah, I remember those. But Carol T says, we had IBMs in my high school, not sure the model. In the 80s, we can hack into other people. You know what? I remember that the only computers that were at school when I was young, when it was in high school, in my last year of high school, they had IBM PCs. And I remember that the teacher, when one of the students was programming something and it didn't work, the teacher would come and see me and say, hey, Gilles, Matthew has a problem in his program and I don't see why. And I would just look and say, oh, that's because on line 20, you have to put a comma and it's going to work okay. And it's like, oh, okay. So even then I was already pretty much geeky on computers. Bobby says, my first computer at home was a DOS and a word processing program. Yep, DOS. My 8286 had DOS, and I had Word. What was it? The very popular word processing back then was Word Perfect, I believe. I think it was Word Perfect. That was the first before Office came, and we had Word and everything. Word Perfect was the thing. You know how things change fast? Word Perfect was the word processor. Everybody had Word Perfect. And suddenly something happened, and I don't know, everybody's now on Microsoft Word. Kind of weird. Oh man. Patrick says, cut my teeth on an IBM PS2 10 megabyte hard drive and 2 floppy drives. Learned basic programming on it. Man. I believe Word Perfect is, it was by Corel. I do think it is. Yep. So the computer, another game changer in our technology world. Now this one is controversial, but nuclear power in all its forms. From the terrifying form of the atomic weapon to the making energy form that is very controversial because of accidents like Chernobyl in the United States, 3 Mile Island. It is controversial. I personally think it's still the future because it's one of the ways that is extremely efficient in producing energy. The only thing is I think we need to rethink the safety, the way it's done. We need to rethink also because one of the biggest problems with nuclear energy is, of course, the waste. The waste is terrible. They don't know what to do with it. They, put it in a hole hundreds of kilometers below the surface. They just go crazy with what we're going to do with all of that. But yet nuclear energy did transform a lot of the way we produce. And, countries like Japan. Japan is very difficult in relying on nuclear energy a lot because it doesn't have much space to do anything. Here in Quebec, we had only one nuclear power station, Gentilly, and they shut it down. They shut it down not because they didn't want to continue, because Hydro-Quebec wanted to actually modernize it and continue producing nuclear electricity with nuclear power. But the population was so scared of nuclear energy that the pressure on the government actually made it shut down. And it's a very costly shutdown. It's a shutdown that's like $3 or $4 billion, which is almost the same price as upgrading it to a new, more modern nuclear energy. The problem is that for now, nuclear energy is still, in the mind of pretty much everybody, a very dangerous form of energy, and that's going to be very difficult to change. But I think, and yes, there are things like Fukushima with when there was the tsunami and everything. Yes, there are reasons why people are scared. The impact of a problem on a nuclear power plant is much, much bigger. But I think as we go on, it's safer and safer to use nuclear energy and to produce electricity using that. And I think it will be the future. I think it's just scaled back for now because people are scared. But as we use fossil fuels and have no more gas at some point, unless we really develop something amazing with power, solar power, which is still, it's there, but solar power is still very inefficient. The cells of solar power, they barely make, I think it's like 0.5% efficiency. It's very, very low efficiency. It doesn't produce a lot of electricity for what it is and for all the energy that's coming down from the sun. I think at some point we'll have to sit down and rethink and look again at nuclear energy and say, okay, we have to do something about it. Carol T says, if we could build them in safer places, don't put them on active fault zones or floodplains or next to the ocean. Of course, that's true. That's true. And like James Capel says, sure, however, not in my backyard. That's pretty much like everybody. Everybody wants that. That's pretty much what's happening, Nobody wants to have power and energy, a nuclear power plant next to their home, but I think there's a way that things can be done. And unless solar power really, there's like some major breakthrough, I'm sorry, but the future looks nuclear power. It's just that it needs to be done in a safer way. And done in a way that, will convince the populations that, look, even if there's something happening, this will stay there, And Patrick says solar and windmills will not going to cut it. Yep, these are okay. They do compensate somehow, but they're not producing enough. Not for the amount of energy that as a modern civilization like ours is using. We are really using a lot of energy right now. And I think this is a game changer in all of its forms, from the atomic weapon to building, nuclear power plants. X-rays. I think that's a major game changer. It's let's stay in the field of a little bit of these rays. So this is a X-ray of someone. Basically, X-rays is a game changer in our modern world because it finally, for the first time, enabled doctors to see through the body when something's wrong, when something's happening. That's also something that is a game changer. It changed the way that medicine and that the medical field is going. So X-rays are something really cool when you think about how you don't have to open somebody, and you can still see what's happening inside their body, broken bones, or if you have pneumonia or whatever, they just take X-rays and they can see. So I think that's in one of the technologies that changed our world. The discovery of X-rays with Marie Curie and all of that basically is pretty amazing, because they, are used extensively today in the medical fields too, for pretty much everything. And that's pretty good when you think about it. A nice way to help. Of course, the internet. We cannot talk about modern technologies that change the world without talking about the internet. That famous internet that you guys are using right now to watch a live show. Something that I'm pretty sure when they created the first network in 1969, I'm pretty sure they didn't think that somebody would be sending high quality HD video around the world through that same network that had just a few universities and some military. That's pretty interesting. It changed the world in many ways. It changed the world because of the way that we communicate. It changed the world because for the first time people have the knowledge. You can know anything about everything through the internet for the first time. Email, but even more, instant messaging or video conferencing makes the world smaller. One of the things that I'll always remember is basically a student that I had to fix their computer, and the student was telling me how that student came from Belgium. It was an exchange of students from Belgium and here in Quebec, and she was a university student. And I remember how she was telling me how she doesn't feel like she's missing home because every night she Skypes her friends and her family, and it feels like they're right there next to her, even though she's on the other side of the Atlantic. So it changes everything. It changes how fast the information is also propagating. Today, we're getting our news through the internet. We're getting the latest thing that's happening through the internet. It is an amazing, amazing thing. And basically, the internet is the new way that we consume a lot of what we need to know and what we need to view. It's changed in so many ways. Netflix, we can watch movies, TV shows now, so many things. The internet is amazing, and it's even more amazing when you think about all the power and all that is needed, and the gazillion of computers out there that need to be there just to broadcast all of this information. So this is a major game changer. The internet is one of the biggest inventions of technology that is totally changing. And I mean, even our mobile devices are connected to the internet now. So, we probably are soon to be like in Terminator and have the Skynet and the computers taking control of the world. So at least we'll have a few years left before it happens, hopefully. Space exploration is another great example of how technology changed our knowledge of the world and the universe around us. Space exploration is something that also impacted our own technology in our own homes, things that we are using every day that are used technically in space exploration that we have in our homes. It impacted our lives every day, but it impacts our knowledge of what's happening all around us. So it's pretty interesting, when you think about it. And space exploration is another great way where we suddenly not only think that we're not necessarily alone. It's something where we think that maybe there's life somewhere else. We're starting to find in the way that we examine the universe that there are planets everywhere. So finally it's like, okay, our sun isn't unique in having its planets. Almost every star has its planets. So basically this is another great game changer in our modern lives, from the day that the Americans set foot on the moon. It was pretty amazing when you think about it. So one of the game changers of our technology, of course, we have the vacuum tube. I could have talked about the vacuum tube. We're going to put it all in this perspective. Of course, the vacuum tube in the early 20th century, but also the transistor. Transistor has changed everything. The transistor changed our world because it miniaturized electronics. It was able to give us the electronics we're using today. The computers, the TVs, everything we use that is electronic, including the phone. There's millions of transistors in these things now. That's also a game changer in our world of technology, I can tell you that. So pretty amazing. What else do we have? Of course, the light bulb. A simple device, but I mean, we use light bulbs. Of course, we have modern version of light bulbs today. Light bulbs that are LEDs. There's fluorescent lighting. There's halogen lighting. Regular incandescent light bulb that's still widely in use today. That's another game changer for for the first time we could light our universe. The night doesn't seem so scary anymore. We light our cities so that, I think if we could, and it wouldn't cost that much, I think cities would light up like if it was daytime, even at midnight. The darkness isn't scary anymore because we light ourselves, and the light bulbs, I can tell you, changed everything today. And that's also a game changer in our inventions, basically. Fiber optic cabling. Fiber optics, sending out light through little tubes. That's a game changer in our way that we use technology today, because fiber optics are pretty much what lets the internet have such high data capacity today. Fiber optics cabling going through in the Atlantic Ocean, in the Pacific Ocean, everywhere, underwater cables. And the fiber optics changed something, because before we had wires, copper wires and coaxial cables, they could take a certain amount of information, but there was limits. Fiber optics kind of pushed that limit to extraordinary power, and now it enables all the communications we have. What I'm doing now, and you're watching, all the bits of data from my computer are going through fiber optics cables everywhere, up to your home, wherever you are. That's another game changer in our technologies. Lasers, they're not just cool things in a Pink Floyd show, but they are also used in many fields in sending out data. They are used as, of course, weapons. They are used as all sorts of usage, like for example in astronomy. Lasers are center point to a lot of our technologies and information technologies. And like I said, it's not just for a Pink Floyd show, basically. So, these are all game changers in our technology. And I'm sure you guys have, like tons of technologies in your head. You say, hey, you haven't talked about this. but this technology is also something that's pretty cool, and you didn't talk about, and it changed the world. There are dozens of other examples. These are examples that I went through while looking at different websites about, technologies that changed the world. But I'm sure you guys have tons of other examples of that. So it was a little quick, but it's our look at technologies that changed the world in Learn the Tech today, show number 26. And it's pretty cool that we have a chat room. I find it really fun. I intend to have more interactions also. I think as we go on, I might do Learn the Tech shows that will have more interaction of what people think about this and that, and everybody. So I want to thank everybody in the chat: Tim Robinson, Paul Farnsworth, Carol T, Boris. This is not a tech show where I answer questions, and Patrick Manny, Bobby Burgess, Ricardo Mota, Tim Robinson, James Capel, everybody that's there. I hope I'm not missing out on people. Thanks everyone for being here. Joanne and everybody, thank you so much for being here. It was really, really cool to have the chat today. And as we're going through, our shows, basically, we're going to check, the way that we can interact more. Also, the chat room is giving me the idea that because I'm coming to a point where I'm going to soon start a new show that I talked about a few months ago, which is From the Couch, where we actually will have an interaction on a technology subject of the week, basically. And so the chat room will be, of course, something central to all of that. Thank you, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back next week, 3 p.m., with our live tech show where we answer your questions. We have Learn the Tech next week, 6 p.m., once again. Thanks, everybody. See you next week. And, of course, this weekend, for those that like radio, shortwave radio, amateur radio, Friday, Saturday, and Monday of next week, 3 shows where we will be, of course, talking about radio. So take care, everyone. Have a nice week. And it was nice to have all of you in the chat. Bye-bye. See you next week.